I think we have to know precisely, and perhaps we have to talk to the people other than the FBI agent who is here, who confirms what our staff report says to the best of his knowledge. I think this is such an important question that if there's any difference on this from the staff report, we should hear from the CIA. And I would ask our CIA officer who is here to take that request back, and if there is a difference that officer had recollection-wise as to what happened at that meeting, whether or not she did in fact refuse to let the FBI know in June of 2001 why the CIA was tracking these two men, why they didn't say at that time that we knew that these two men had visas to the United States. The FBI still didn't know that. That still wasn't on the watch list as of June of 2001. Now, this is 16 months after the CIA knew that these men had visas to come to the United States, had entered the United States. Still, according to our staff report, there is this refusal on the part of the CIA to share this information. And this is critically important information. I think that we've got to have accountability in this system. And that failure is massive. And if that information should have been shared, and should have been shared a lot earlier, and if watch lists should have been entered, and if FBI should have been notified, which it seems to me it's clear all that should have happened, then we've got to know who is responsible for those failures. If we're going to really break down walls, real and imaginary.
If only we had that much zeal and passion to get to the bottom of that singular problem, which was not sharing pertinent data, information to the Department of Justice and to the Department of State and at principals meetings, we wouldn't be in the problem currently right now, which is not having enough information to prosecute or to hold people liable, to fire people, to suspend people. 23 years later, we still have people in the truth movement that don't even believe hijackers were involved with the attacks. We have people in the media who will not report the news, especially this news of where CIA personnel intentionally withheld information from the FBI, from the Bush administration regarding them monitoring two known Al-Qaeda operatives in Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, because what they were doing was illegal. They were running an illegal operation inside the United States with Saudi intelligence involved. That's the reason, one of the reasons why they didn't tell the FBI or didn't tell the State Department, because if the FBI knew that Khalid al-Mihdhar and Nawaf al-Hazmi entered the United States, John O'Neill, the special agent in charge in New York, would order them to be arrested or at least detained, thereby ruining this secret and illegal operation headed by the CIA and Saudi intelligence. At the same time, probably unbeknownst to the CIA or the NSA or the FBI, or if they did know, they knew little about it. You have Israeli intelligence monitoring everybody, including the FBI, including the DEA, including living in close proximity to all the 9/11 hijackers. Stop there. That's a taboo subject. You're an anti-Semite. Don't talk about it. Talk about the no planes. Talk about the living hijackers. Talk about the mini nukes in the basement. Talk about anything else, but don't talk about that. And that's exactly the reason why the truth movement has to, whatever is left of them, has to admit that their previously held beliefs of none of these planes being hijacked, or that the hijackers are alive, or that they're patsies, that they were wrong. because the actual conspiracies involving 9/11 involved the intelligence community, domestic and foreign. Now, just think about this. And none of these planes were hijacked, that the hijackers didn't exist, the following would not exist: the NSA's monitoring of bin Laden's satellite phone, to which they got a number, which was an Al Qaeda communications hub in Yemen. From there, the NSA and CIA began monitoring operations of Al Qaeda network around the world. From there, they learned about a high-level meeting in Malaysia involving a number of terrorist affiliates, members of the Jemaah Islamiyah in Indonesia, which are allied with Al Qaeda, as well as the leaders of the plane's operation. The CIA and NSA knew about this and told the FBI. They withheld information about two men that were going to come inside the United States, which they heard in a phone call in Yemen, in which two future hijackers, Khalid al-Mihdhar and Wafaa Hazmi, entered the United States, didn't tell the FBI, but the CIA and the NSA knew, and Israel. During the years 2000, 2001, the intelligence services were monitoring everybody involved with the 9/11 attacks. Afterwards, when the attacks were done, the Israelis who that were here were all deported on visa violations. The Saudis moved on to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Meanwhile, the NSA and CIA began to cover their own ass, even by obstructing justice in the 9/11 Commission, by lying about not having information regarding two hijackers, and also running an illegal operation inside the United States. All of what I just said does not exist. That means that every single damning conspiracy in which we could link specifically to certain people within the intelligence community, as well as foreign dignitaries like Bandar bin Sultan, the U.S. ambassador to the United States and close friend of the Bush family, we cannot connect any of these people to the hijackers because they don't exist. And if they don't exist, that means that now it is up to you to prove that the federal government at every level, including state and local, from the FAA to the NTSB to the INS to New York Police to Baltimore Police to Florida Police, people that worked at American Airlines, people that worked at United Airlines, they all have to be in on it in order to keep the story alive that, hey, none of these hijackers really existed and we all lied. You see how impossible that would be. We could still salvage what is left of the 9/11 truth movement and start a new movement, one that is proactive instead of reactive. Because you're not proactive, you're not in court, you're actually making a film about a courtroom. That's Richard Gage. That's what he's done with your money. You have to basically admit that, hey, I got it wrong, which is perfectly fine. I came from a conspiratorial background. I watched Loose Change. I watched Dave Von Kleist in Plain Sight. They were wrong, and so was I. I corrected the issue because I care about getting it right, because I want to be proactive in a court of law. It would help if we had a lot of people, right? It would help if we had a lot of people involved. We could bring attention to and get what? The attention of who? The national media. But because there's not enough people who are proactive, who have actual evidence of a cover up involving the intelligence services and maybe even complicity at some level, they're not going to report it. What they will do is have on Alex Jones and Jim Fetzer and Kevin Barrett to talk about what, and John and Morgan Reynolds to talk about what? Hologram planes, living hijackers. Because what they want to do, and they have already done it, is to lump everybody together who questions the federal government about the 9/11 attacks and the cover up thereof, to make it all seem that they're all as nuts as these people. You have self-professed leaders within the truth movement, self-professed leaders, meaning that they call themselves experts when they're not at all. People like Richard Gage and Barbara Honegger and Christopher Bolin, they know nothing about 9/11. I know from experience because I dealt with these people over the years, trying to have a conversation with them. Instead, they just ignore me and just call me a person who regurgitates the official narrative because I believe that the planes were hijacked and they crashed where they crashed. Meanwhile, that's not talking about the official narrative. That's the beginning of delving into the investigation that was covered up by who? The intelligence services. So I go and try to talk to these people, but they call me a defender of the official narrative. Meanwhile, I'm the most aggressive, the most proactive in attacking who? The CIA, Saudi intelligence, the NSA, and Israeli intelligence. There's a few of us still left. I mean, the new blood that's coming, that I have unmitigated faith in the turning of the tide. People like Darren Harvey and Sean Russell and Ben and Eric from the Project for New American Century and Jonathan Bellasort. The few of us that are still around, like me and DJ Tomadeni, we've been around a little bit longer, and there's not many of us. I mean, you got, Robbie Martin really doesn't talk about 9/11 much, and Ryan Dawson, and that's it. I mean, really, as for the old guard, I mean, John Gold is inactive, but yeah, that's what's left of the old guard, right? So what I try to do is I try to educate for the new people that I'm hoping will be the force that we need and that could reach more people than I ever could. And that's my hope. That's my dream, is to basically get these people to get ready to bring charges against the federal government or the intelligence services and basically say, hey, wait a minute, with this new information that we got, you basically interfered in the investigation into the 9/11 attack, which the CIA did. The CIA intentionally withheld information from the FBI. The NSA intentionally withheld information from the CIA and the FBI and the State Department. The Israeli intelligence that was involved with the art student ring, not the ones in the building in the World Trade Center, they weren't even Jewish. I'm talking about the ones on the ground, the bigger operation, the 250 plus that were monitoring everybody, even the intelligence services here. The Saudi intelligence ring that were helping providing financial and logistical support to future hijackers. That's what I want to illuminate. That's what I want to bring. That's the basis of 9/11 right there. You ever wonder why Richard Gage and Barbara Honegger and Truth Action Project and architects and engineers and none of these people went to court? I'll leave architects and engineers on the side. But Truth Action Project, Lawyers Committee for 9/11 Inquiry, now the new group headed by Ted Walter, who he has, people that spread propaganda like Elizabeth Woodward and Kevin Ryan and Richard Gage. Why would you have these people? If you're after the truth, why would you have people that deny the truth, that help cover up the foreign intelligence services of Saudi Arabia and Israel as well as the CIA and the NSA. You ever think about that? If you're in the truth movement, you understand what I'm talking about, right? These people are one-trick ponies. They'll talk about living hijackers and drone airliners and hologram planes, but they won't talk about what I talk about. Why? Because they don't know it. And second, they think it's the official narrative and they don't want you to read. Right? They don't want you to read the commission report. They don't want you to read the Joint House inquiry. So you know what I do? I basically have to read chapter by chapter these pages to show you, hey, listen, we got conspiracies within the freaking reports themselves. And we could see what's missing. But was it investigated? Why was that? Why is Able Danger not in the report? Why is the Israeli art student ring not in the 9/11 Commission report through the Gerald Shea memorandum? You know what? Wait a minute. Why? Why is it? You'll understand why as soon as you delve into these issues, but you're not, because they told you not to read, because they told you that if you did that, you're a part of the official narrative and you're a shill and you're a government operative. And that's pretty damning because that's what they did to David Chandler. You know, Richard Gage's so-called friend. Well, when the Truth Movement attacked David Chandler and Wayne Costi and Ken Jenkins because they said that Flight 77 hit crashed the Pentagon. Well, Richard Gage stood silent. Meanwhile, you had these cultish members of the no planes that went attacking them and their private lives. So much for the advent of truth, right? So much for the advent of justice, right? So much for being proactive when it counts. So they attack their own and they eat their own. That's why I want nothing to do with the current truth movement. What I'm trying to do is salvage what's left in the hopes of having them basically join a new movement, a movement led by people that are proactive, that have tangible information, that have evidence of a cover-up, of obstructing justice, and also illegality within the United States, running illegal operations, and maybe even complicity in the attacks by providing logistical and financial support to the hijackers themselves. But if you don't believe in hijackers, you don't believe in hijacked planes, nothing I said is true. And what are you going to do? You're basically going to sit in front of your computer in the year 2030 saying 9/11 is an inside job like some cheerleader. How has that been working out for you in the last 23 years? You're going to be like Gene Laratonda. I applaud his effort, and I always will, regarding his emotions for advocacy. I wish we had somebody like that regarding the information side of things. But he's so invested with Richard Gage and those people that he can't detach from them and realize that they're harmful to go forward because they don't believe in correcting their mistakes, because either they're too embarrassed or they don't want to lose their money train. Because to them, the facts, the truth, and justice don't matter. They may say it matters, but they don't put their money where their mouth is. Just think about this. Richard Gage is making a film, a fictional film, about a courtroom listening to evidence of an inside job. I'll say it again. Richard Gage is making a film about a courtroom listening to evidence of an inside job instead of using those donations to get an actual law firm to represent him and whoever's with him to present actual evidence of an inside job in an actual courtroom. To you people in the truth movement, I'm not degrading you. I am not debasing you. I came from you. DJ Thermodetonator came from you. Richard Cox, the Coast, the Darkened Hour, we all basically came from the conspiratorial side. It's how we still question things. You should not be embarrassed about that. What you should do is take a moment to realize that your positions regarding living hijackers is false. The media never said that. For example, after 9/11, in the days after 9/11, there was a Saudi airline pilot named Abdul Rahman Al Al Omari. Abdul Rahman Al Omari. One of the hijackers of Flight 11 that crashed into the North Tower was Abdulaziz Al Omari. And they put the picture of the Saudi pilot because he called, I think, Fox or CNN, one of those, and said, I'm not a hijacker. This is me. This is my, that's me in the picture, but I'm not a hijacker. Because the media reported falsely because they got information about a guy whose name is similar to a hijacker. Because people went up to Abdul Aziz Rahman Al Amari and said, oh my God, your picture is on TV. You're one of the hijackers, but you're alive. So the truth movement, who didn't do their due diligence, people like Jim Fetzer and Alex Jones, they took that and ran with it and said the hijackers are alive, instead of realizing the mistake. And the mistake is simple. The hijacker's name is Abdul Aziz Al Amari. The Saudi pilot is Abdul Rahman Aziz Al Amari. One small name change. And the faces are completely different because Abdul Aziz Al Amari was 23, I think 22 or 23. Abdul Rahman Aziz Al Amari is like 56. That's just one example. And the media, in their rush to produce the updated news, and that's nothing new, provided information that was not accurate, and the truth movement, the leaders, self-professed leaders of the truth movement, ran with it. The hijackers are alive. Just remember, think about how silly this claim is, that the hijackers are alive. Well, if they're alive, where are the thousands and thousands of the truthers out there interviewing these people? It's obvious. They're dead. You have to realize, you have to sit in the mirror or just talk to yourself and say, ah, oh, damn it, man. I believed in that for so long. It's so embarrassing. It's not. You're a victim. You're a victim of people that didn't do their due diligence. And your zeal, your passion for justice was interfered with by disinformation. And you were actually thinking that, hey, I'm bringing light to a conspiracy and holding people accountable. But basically what you did was you didn't really investigate the matter because you were in a rush to basically point the finger at the federal government. And I'm just telling you that that's not the way to look at things. You have to look at 9/11 like a crime, because it is. And you remember, you're an honest cop. I always use this analogy of like, a cop goes before a crime scene, say like a murder scene, and you don't want the cop to basically, without looking at any evidence whatsoever, to make a decision and say, hey, I know what didn't happen here, or I know what happened here, because you're going to look at him and say, this motherfucker's corrupt. Right? You have to look at things without any persuasive ideology behind it. Whether you hate the Jews or whether you think the Israeli government is evil, which they are, you can't just say, Israel's behind 9/11. I mean, that's irrational, and that's a damning claim. You can get in trouble for that. It's called being held liable. Now, I could sit here and say George Tenet was behind 9/11, and basically George Tenet, if you ever saw that, could say, I'm holding you liable in the court of law, and I'd lose just like that, right? And my reputation is shot, and that's it. Now, it takes, it takes many years to build a reputation, a solid reputation. And I hope at some level I achieved a little bit of that, but it only takes mere seconds to destroy it. And if you ever see me online, why I'm so aggressive, why I'm so anal about providing information and being very strict with it is because I want to get it right 100% of the time, and I'm not. But that's the goal I strive to be, is 100% correct, because lives are at stake, and also trying to hold people accountable for crimes is at stake, and time is not of the essence. The more time that goes forward, the less likely we are to hold people accountable for either interfering in the 9/11 investigation or withholding information that led to the success of the attacks, or maybe even complicity in the attacks themselves. And this is the reason why I do videos like this. It's not to demean people. I am aggressive to people that keep promoting false theories when they know better. Richard Gage hates me because I always attack him, but I'm not attacking him as a person. I don't know him as a person. I attack his position because his position, his beliefs are demonstrably false. Demonstrably false. He doesn't know what happened at the Pentagon. Yes, we know what happened at the Pentagon. A plane crashed there. Because there is little debris, because the plane intentionally crashed into a building, there isn't going to be enough big plane debris. These people actually try to compare this to an ordinary plane crash where the pilot dumps the fuel and tries to land safely and slowly. Yeah, you're going to see large pieces of the cabin and wings. You're not going to see that when a plane is traveling 500 miles an hour into a concrete building that holds 38,000 pounds of fuel. The plane is a bomb. You don't need a missile underneath the plane. You don't need bombs on the plane. The plane's literally a fucking bomb. Literally. That's why they chose flights from the East Coast to the West Coast, because it's fully fueled. And you never saw an intentional plane crash. It's very, very rare. Plane crashes are rare. They are. But intentional plane crashes, martyrdom plane crashes, are extremely rare. And I can understand why people, because when I first saw Loose Change and I looked at the Pentagon and said, wow, what the fuck? There's no wings, there's no tail, there's nothing really. That's right, because then I looked at intentional plane crashes like German Wings 8925, or I looked at PSA 1771, and I looked at those crashes and said, wow, they look just like Pentagon or Shanksville. Because those planes were going at the maximum speed intentionally into a hard surface. This is about being right and wrong. This is about life and death. This is about good and evil. If you are a truther who holds these positions that are not proven by fact, and yet you still believe them, you have to ask yourself why I still believe them. And I'll tell you why. It's because people like Richard Gage and Alex Jones and Jim Fetzer and Christopher Bolin and Rebecca Roth and the members of Loose Change and the members of the Citizens Investigation Team and the members of Pilots for 9/11 Truth and Thierry Mason and Judy Wood and Rebecca Roth and Barbara Honegger, all these people told you that if you believe that the planes were hijacked, you are a shill, you promote the official narrative, and you shouldn't be reading these things. You should just agree with us. Don't question us. Just believe us, because we're fighting for truth. You should automatically just stop believing these people. Take what they have to say, put it through the scientific method, see what they say is true, and you'll find out on your own. I tell people, don't just believe me personally. I want you to do your due diligence and take out the points I'm saying that you think that you haven't heard before or you find questionable, and then you look it up, right? You look up, and this takes time. Reading contemporary sources, reading memorandums for the records, reading official documents, and see if it's accurate. That's how you know something is true from something that is false. And it irks me that we still have people regurgitating these things 23 years later, like no plane crashes at the Pentagon in Shanksville. I mean, my God, 23 years later, you would think at this point we would actually be holding Israel accountable for having an illegal operation inside the United States, monitoring who? The hijackers living next door to them in the same neighborhoods, and also monitoring the United States intelligence services and local law enforcement. We can't hold them accountable because you don't talk about that. In the same light that you don't talk about the CIA withholding information from the FBI and the NSA withholding information from the FBI regarding the hijackers inside the United States and the hijackers in Malaysia and the hijackers that came from Germany and Yemen. So you're going to have to make a decision. If we're going to go forward, if we're going to hold people accountable, if we're going to say, hey, listen, I'm true to my word. I'm a truther. I care about the truth. I care about justice. You're going to have to basically make a very hard decision. And the hard decision is this. You have to admit you were wrong. You have to disassociate from people that still propagate false theories. And then you're going to feel like you're alone, but you're not. Because I'm still out here. DJ Thermal Detonator is still out here. Sean Russell is still out here. Darren Harvey is still out here. Ed Brotherton's still out here. Richard Cox is still out here. Ben and Eric, the Project for New American Century, they're still out here. Jonathan Bellasort, he's still out here. Robbie Martin, John Gold, Ryan Dawson. Okay, we're still out here. And we're not going to hold it against you. You're a victim. I will always be aggressive to people that propagate false theories because I care about the truth. And my goal has always been, when I first started viral media, was never to take a dime off anybody, to share information in the hopes of better preparing my followers with information, empowering them by having knowledge passed on to them in the hopes of having those people spread awareness about what actually happened on 9/11 and what happened before it, in the hopes of finally holding people accountable. Those are my goals. And if you want motivation, if you need it, you can't contact any of us for some reason. And I'm always going to try and be available, because when I first started, there was really nobody around. Some people actually thought who they were and felt that maybe I'm talking to a lesser. For yous who are just starting out with 9/11, you look at me and say, wow, he's got a big channel. He probably, is not available. I'm always going to be, especially for people like you, always going to be available, because I know how that is. I'm not better than you. I'm not smarter than you. I'm not an expert. I'm just somebody who has a little bit of knowledge about this one subject in world history. That's all. I'm accessible. I always will be, no matter what, late night or whatever. It doesn't matter, because I know that feeling. It's a hard decision. And it's going to be tough. And I'm sure people like Gene Laratonda, if he's ever watching this, if he didn't have a hissy fit about what I said about Richard Gage, and you made it this far, bless you, right? But you're going to have to make a tough decision, because you know what's going to happen? You're going to get the David Chandler treatment. But you know what? At least you can go to bed and say, I know I did the right thing. They can't, because they're still propagating false theories, which helps to interfere in any future investigation into 9/11. And that's the reason why 23 years later, you haven't gotten anywhere. So with that, thank you for watching. Thank you very much for listening. And thank you for taking an interest in this important topic, because we need light in the darkness, and to get the people that were involved in the cover up, in the obstruction of justice, in the interference of the investigation, and providing support and logistical help to the hijackers and to the federal government that still protects Israel and Saudi Arabia every single day by classifying material showing that these two agencies were involved with monitoring the hijackers. The only thing we don't know is what we don't know about them and what they collected, because we deported them. And the federal government still helps to cover up the CIA and the NSA and Saudi intelligence from the victims' families. If they're doing that to the victims' families, what do you think they're going to do to us, right? Worse. So we need a lot more people involved to bring light, bring attention to something like the Canastrell document or Operation Encore or the Gerald Shea memorandum, right? Because that's what counts. Those are the real evidences that count. Not loose change, not in plain sight. That's the reason why these people have a shelf life. You ever wonder why Christopher Bowen's not around anymore, or Rebecca Roth, or Barbara Honegger, or Jason Burmers? It's because they repeat themselves so much that even their own followers are saying, "What, you got anything new?" Because they can't have anything new. Or in the future, you're never going to hear these people ever again. You know who's going to be around? Me. You know who's going to be around? DJ Thermal Detonator. You know who's going to be around? The future. Sean Russell and all those guys. The future. They're the future. Bolin, Roth, and all the loose change, all those people, they're dead in the water. Why? Because they don't learn anything new, because they consider anything classified as to be the official narrative. Anything from any contemporary source of the federal government, the state government, the local government, even if it shows a cover-up, because people in the FBI are saying, hey, listen, we didn't get information because it was interfered with by the CIA. And I've interviewed these people. They're not in on the official narrative. They're going against it, right? And they're trying to show you there's a cover-up. Hey, listen, I'll read this document. But you don't read, because these people told you not to. And they told you to trust them. Just like George Bush said, do not listen to conspiracy theorists. Just trust us. How'd that work out? All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching. Have a good weekend. See you in the next video.